originally in Spanish, June 2023. First of all, what is said about Egypt officially is not the truth. Not only about the pyramids, but the whole context and history is twisted. Egypt, as it is officially known, is a blended mix of real events and misinterpretations. The most basic point to understand is that the actual large infrastructure of Egypt, such as the pyramids and some buildings that today are called temples, are what is left over from another civilization before the one they are studying. And that also applies to many other archaeological sites in the world, such as those found in Mesoamerica with the Mayas. In other words, the civilization that is being studied as classical Egypt is a secondary one that took advantage of the existing infrastructure there. That is, they inherited what was already there. They used everything for their own uses and with their own values. But those buildings were already there. They did not build them. To this, we must add the poorly done reconstruction for the purpose of mass control. That is, to control public perception, to push an agenda of imposing a false world history, in addition to simple profit-making goals. So, a lot of what people see in Egypt today is just a modern interpretation based on poorly done reconstructions and with the purpose to make everything look more spectacular. And that does not reflect the real history, not even the part of the civilization that settled there on those sites using what was previously built. Now, speaking of the previous civilization, it was a starport city, multiracial, created by the Galactic Federation way back, and this includes the pyramids, although the oldest of the constructions there is the Sphinx. Those watermarks are an indication that the Earth was flooded by the Tiamat event. That base city existed before the flood, and it is quite likely that that was the cause of its destruction. Most of that city today lies on 3 main levels underground, just below Giza. But at the time, it was above ground and below ground. It is just that what has managed to survive until now, until today, is the part below ground that the cabal that controls the Earth matrix does not wish to accept exists. However, rumors and testimonies permeate to this day, in addition to the stellar data I have. Down below, in addition to needed living facilities, there are still chambers with technology considered extremely high by today's accepted level of human knowledge. Although what can be moved has already been looted by the cabal personnel and taken to safe places, much remains there that is impossible for them to remove. And that includes a substantial but undetermined number of spacecraft still parked there in their hangars, some of which may still be alive or functional. That, in addition to also great diverse technology or evidence of the existence of technological devices above the capacity of current mankind's understanding. The mere existence of these subterranean chambers of gigantic size, that is, 3 levels each the size of the Giza Meseta at least, is enough to overthrow the official version of human history.
Wow, thank you. The previous civilization was called Egypt too? What does the word Egypt mean?
It comes from the Greek translation of the city of Memphis, as it was pronounced back then, Aegyptus. The earlier name, the one for that base, I don't have that piece of information.
But that technology is being used. The one that was not vandalized? Those facilities under Giza are operational? Or is it all totally closed and guarded?
It was vandalized for millennia, but much of that technology cannot be removed even with modern means. For example, they can't take a spaceship out of there without opening the roof above it, and that would destroy the flat part of the Giza Meseta, and it would be a worldwide scandal that would be difficult to cover up.
And is there anyone in that facility right now?
I can't know exactly what's still there as far as movable objects, but a lot of what's left is big and hard to move. For example, metal walls with equipment, or whatever is inside the spacecraft that they won't be able to open, even with diamond-tipped drills today. And they won't be able to open it not only because of the hardness of the hull materials, but because those ships usually have a hull constructed of self-repairing polymorphous materials.
So they haven't been able to access the inside of the ships. And since when did the Cabal have knowledge of all of that? I can't imagine the Romans inside the facility.
I can't know since when. I have no way of knowing that. But it's very possible, at least since the 19th century.
Did Nefertiti know about all of that? Did Ishtar also know about it?
Everything about Ishtar comes from the stellar attempts to guide the development of that civilization that emerged where the base was, right after its destruction. And the information about Ishtar and similar gods ends up being an interpretation of that later civilization about people and events that they did not understand well. Nefertiti undoubtedly yes, as well as Ishtar. Nefertiti is also the case of trying to guide the perception and beliefs of the population of post-Tiamat Egypt. At least the priests of that Egypt did know about the base below, and only they had access to those places back then, as it was considered the abode of the gods.
Wow, I imagine that the pharaohs also had access then, and the only access was through the sphinxes?
No, there were multiple accesses at various points on the plateau, nowadays covered and buried. There are even known accesses from inside each of the 3 main pyramids, although the only one that is clear to me is that of Cheops, in the lowest chamber towards the plateau on the wall.
But to access there, you have to crawl from the pyramid to Cheops? It looks very old and with a lot of water, very dark.
At that time, it was not necessary to crawl, and as far as I know, up to that point of the lowest chamber, you can walk normally. Despite everything, and despite the high technology, it is a very old place.
Evidently, tourists can't get there.
That's right, no. Still, that wall doesn't show anything clearly, but the entrance is behind the wall put there afterwards. However, it is still there.
Okay, so Egypt as we know it has nothing to do with how things really were.
That's right. Everything is altered, full of theories taken for granted with no real support, and with control agendas in mind.
No Rosetta Stones. That was later.
That's right. That is later, and only deciphers, at best, the more modern Egypt of the civilization after that of the subterranean base city. Egypt was a highly technological place with ties to the Federation and multiple races there. Not the official human portrayal with pharaohs and slaves. That is just an excuse to hide what is evident of the Egyptian civilization. That is, monuments and real constructions, although they also altered them too, or mostly.
There were no slaves in Egypt, right?
No, there never were, not en masse, as in that culture. Nor were there pharaohs, since that is not even an Egyptian term, as you know. A pharaoh is a lieutenant or landowner in the Yemen area. It is not Egyptian. And the term pharaoh emerged only because it was mentioned as part of the Old Testament stories. It was Christianity that introduced it much later.
So who was there in Egypt?
There were kings, as such, not pharaohs. A short excerpt from the conversation with Swaruu.
Everyone through the movies thinks that Egypt had slaves. And you said Egypt didn't have slaves, right?
You have to realize it all comes from the same cabal that wants to perpetuate their viewpoints. The concept of slaves in Egypt surely comes from the idea of placing in people's psyche that they had been tyrannical oppressors over the people of Israel. The problem is that in the very name Israel, there is the clue to understand that they were just more Egyptians. Very few people, including historians, connected. Israel means, in short, the people who worship the god Aten, Ra, and his representatives, El. The official history of or about Egypt is especially bad or distorted by interests upon interests over at least 200 years, Rome being its main distorter. All to fit their writings and their guided and fabricated religions.